My FIL whispered, "The life insurance pays double if she doesn't wake up from surgery." I was standing outside the hospital chapel when I heard him, not praying inside like I'd assumed when he excused himself from the surgical waiting room, but on his phone in the narrow hallway between the chapel entrance and the vending machines, his back to me, voice low, but not quite low enough. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed with that particular frequency that makes hospital corridors feel like purgatory, and my father-in-law's words cut through that hum like a serrated blade. My wife, Rebecca, was in pre-op 20 floors above us, getting prepped for a complicated spinal surgery that her neurosurgeon had rated as moderately high risk. And here was her father, discussing life insurance payouts with someone on the phone, his tone carrying the same casual interest you'd use to discuss stock portfolios or real estate investments. My brain couldn't immediately process what I was hearing because it was so fundamentally wrong, so completely divorced from what a father should be thinking about while his daughter was about to go under the knife. I stood there, frozen, with 2 cups of terrible hospital coffee in my hands, the heat seeping through the cardboard sleeves, while my entire understanding of my father-in-law rearranged itself into something darker and infinitely more dangerous. I'd been married to Rebecca for 6 years when her back problems finally became unbearable enough to require surgical intervention. We'd tried everything else first, physical therapy and pain management, and 3 different rounds of epidural injections, but the herniated discs in her lumbar spine kept compressing nerves until she couldn't stand for more than 20 minutes without her left leg going numb. Her neurosurgeon, Dr. Amelia Thornton, had explained the procedure in detail during our consultation. They'd go in through her back, remove the damaged disc material, and fuse 2 vertebrae together using bone grafts and titanium hardware. The surgery itself would take 4 to 6 hours, and the recovery would be brutal but necessary. Dr. Thornton had been clear about the risks, which included the standard surgical complications like infection and blood clots, but also more serious possibilities like paralysis or death if something went catastrophically wrong during the procedure. The odds of serious complications were low, maybe 3 to 5%, but they weren't zero, and that non-zero probability had been keeping me awake at night for the 2 weeks since we'd scheduled the surgery date. Rebecca's father, Graham Sterling, had inserted himself into our medical crisis with the aggressive helpfulness that characterized most of his interactions with us. He was a successful commercial real estate developer, the kind of guy who wore expensive suits even on weekends and who measured his worth by the size of his investment portfolio. When Rebecca first told him about needing surgery, he'd immediately offered to pay for everything, waving away our protests about insurance coverage with dismissive comments about making sure his daughter got the absolute best care money could buy. He'd shown up at our consultation with Dr. Thornton and asked pointed questions about success rates and complication statistics, taking notes in a leather portfolio like he was evaluating a business deal. At the time, I'd interpreted his intensity as fatherly concern expressed through his particular lens of controlling every situation through money and information. Looking back now, I can see how his questions had focused specifically on mortality rates and worst-case scenarios, lingering on those topics longer than seemed natural for someone hoping for the best possible outcome. The life insurance policies had come up about 3 months before the surgery, during a family dinner at Graham's house in the wealthy suburb where Rebecca had grown up. He'd brought it up casually over dessert, mentioning that he'd been reviewing his estate planning documents and realized Rebecca should have better life insurance coverage now that she was married and potentially thinking about having kids. He said he'd taken the liberty of researching policies for us and had found an excellent deal through his insurance broker, $1 million policy for Rebecca and a similar one for me, both with accidental death and dismemberment riders that would pay double in certain circumstances. The premiums would be reasonable, he said, and he'd be happy to pay them as an early inheritance gift since he wanted to make sure we were protected. Rebecca had been touched by the gesture, but what happened next changed everything. Full story is linked below or on my channel.